Hello! Our story begins on Cloud City, where Han, Leia, Chewie, and C-3PO were following Lando Calrissian through the beautiful town. Lando's system was telling them all about the changes he was able to make once he gained control over Cloud City. Han was simply impressed as he followed his friend along. They were kinda buddies, but also kinda playing it cool. For now. Lando was trying to get past this entire event because, in his mind, it was going to be a nightmare to have to deal with the Empire. As they were walking through the corridors, 3PO stopped. He heard an R2 unit and he walked into the door and looked. When he saw that there were Ugnaughts in the room, he turned around immediately. They were little demons for droids. The Ugnaughts could rearrange any droid circuits with their eyes closed and without an instruction manual on the droid variant or type. They were great for repairs, but 3PO wasn't here to play games with them. He stumbled out of the room and chased after his friends, but on the way to do that, he got lost. He seemed to have taken a wrong turn. No one seemed to notice, so he was all alone, walking through a city he'd never been to before. Luckily for 3PO, the Empire wasn't here, so it wouldn't be a big deal, right? There was a little bit bothering the golden droid though. When he was on Hoth, R2 decided that he would update his mainframe with a memory reboot. Essentially, R2 had carried a disk with him since Polis Massa, containing his memories from when he was a Clone Wars droid and even before that. The memories were a little bit spotty right now, but 3PO could remember more than he had before. Despite Bail Organa clearing up his memory, R2 decided to keep the backups just in case. So on Hoth, R2 plugged some of those memory drives back into 3PO. In all fairness, it had been 2 decades since the Clone Wars. There wasn't really any reason to hide things anymore, right? 3PO, due to the influx of memories on his hard drive, was simply wandering around through the halls thinking back on things that he experienced but had no recollection of experiencing until the last several hours. 3PO felt a little alone due to the fact that his friends kinda just walked away without him. But he was alright. He was a droid. He'd survive. Wondering where his friends went left him with his own devices. So while he was walking through memories of decades before, he was passing civilians, droids, and what was that? A stormtrooper? That didn't seem likely. The Empire would usually make a show of force. They would station themselves in front of the main hyperspace route out of the planet to make their presence known. 3PO turned around and whatever he saw was gone. Maybe he was just imagining things. At least in accordance to what Bail used to say about Imperial blockades, they'd set them up on a hyperspace route, force people to pass it on the way in and out of the system, and if they didn't do that, then they stationed a destroyer above or around the city as a show of force. There weren't any signs of the Empire here, nothing aside from guards that intercepted them upon their arrival, but they weren't Empire. 3PO continued walking, and after a good couple hours, he stumbled into a room. The door was open and he just walked in. As he did, he immediately regretted it. His eyes landed on the bare skin of a man whose head was covered in scars and pale as the moonlight. 3PO on instinct prepared to turn around and run away. As Anakin's eyes lifted up from the soulless gaze of his helmet, he looked at the droid he built almost 30 years before. Anakin squinted his eyes before saying the name C-3PO, which immediately got the droid's attention. He recognized the voice, but the face didn't ring any bells for him. Anakin was in meditation. He was preparing to meet Han and Leia at a dinner in his honor. Lando was bringing them over, and Boba was going to do his dramatic reveal. They had everything planned out the way they wanted to have it. Vader was just in here because he was really grappling with the idea of having a son and learning that said son survived something he was told he didn't survive. The last 20 years of his life had been built on a lie. Palpatine convinced him that he killed Padme in his anger, and maybe he did. He'd been to the mausoleum, so he knew that she was dead, but maybe he didn't kill her immediately. There was now at least the possibility that she survived her injuries and gave birth before dying. The only confusing aspect was the funeral, but there was no one refuting what he had seen, her being carried down with a pregnant body. With 3PO here, all the confused emotions he was feeling had now amplified. It was like all the murdering, genocide, and subjugation he was a part of filled in a gap of pain, and now he was left with questions. He asked C-3PO if that was really him, and the droid nodded his head, saying that he was quite sorry for barging in, but he wanted to know, how exactly did he know who he was? Anakin sighed, and took a deep breath, telling the droid that his memory was probably wiped after the fall of the Republic, that he was the man who built him. 3PO responded with a bit of a misunderstanding. Despite him still getting acquainted with his old memories, he couldn't deny the fact that he knew Anakin Skywalker, or the boy the woman referred to as Annie, was the one who built him. Vader stood there, placing his helmet back over his head. While he was in meditation, it was easier for him to breathe. Without the meditation, it was hard to concentrate on breathing but also listening. He asked 3PO if the woman's name was Shmi. The The deep and booming voice of the Dark Lord was a stiff contrast to the weak and feeble voice of a man whose vocal cords had been burnt to a crisp. Vader stood there anxiously for a moment. Maybe for the first time since Obi-Wan arrived at the Death Star, did he feel this much anxiety over someone else. 3PO nodded his head and referred to Anakin's mother as Mistress Shmi. She was the one who took care of him for a decade. He spent most of his functioning life with her, and then another woman. But 3PO was able to recall how sad Shmi was, always hoping that Anakin would get to see every star like he dreamed of, and something else? Vader's fist squeezed, impatiently waiting for the next heartbreaking detail from his long-gone mother. 3PO stumbled over his words as he searched through his memory banks, looking for the answer. He then said that Shmi spoke about a Jedi, something about Annie and his dream. Jedi, dream, and Anakin were all he could really put together at the moment, aside from the whole star thing. Vader could understand that if it was what he thought, which was a memory wipe, then there would be some difficulty for 3PO to remember things. All of this would be common knowledge for Skywalker, being that he built the literal droid standing in front of him. Vader looked down to his hand, and the same question Obi-Wan asked him 10 years before crossed his mind. What had he become? His mother spoke about him when he was gone, and it was clear she was hoping that he could follow his dreams of becoming a Jedi. 3PO could see the frustration and asked why these names meant anything to him. If he built him, then why would his name be Darth Vader? Did he build him before Anakin did? 3PO had no memory before Skywalker rebuilt his broken parts. So much had been lost in whatever junkyard he was discovered in, so his question sat in the air for moments. Vader turned his head as he expressed quietly and almost under his breathing apparatus that he was Anakin Skywalker. He was the boy who once built him. 3PO looked at Vader for a long moment, before he said it was such a shame. He asked what happened, still trying to piece together what little he remembered from Mustafar. Vader didn't want to speak about it, but 3PO did. How come he was no longer what Shmi said about him? The woman cared about him a lot. Despite his memory banks cranking away, he was siphoning through every time he heard the name Annie or Anakin, and it showed up a lot with Mr. Shmi, and some other woman, Adme or Padme, something like that. 3PO looked at Vader as he thought on all the recent revelations. He told 3PO that it was complicated, something that he couldn't expect a droid to understand. But 3PO stopped him there, admitting that human emotions weren't something he could grasp fully, but it was within his design, the one that Anakin rebuilt, for him to at least sympathize or try to understand. Vader's breathing got more shallow, the apparatus made less noise, and they stood, staring at each other, in silence for what felt like hours. Not even for a second did Vader consider what he should have been doing right now. When he was supposed to be with Boba, he wasn't, so Han and Chewie entered the room. Boba popped out dramatically, Chewie blasted him with a bowcaster, and he was blown out the window. Boba used his jetpack to survive, but the rebels were now on the run, using Lando as a hostage of sorts. Without Vader, their biggest foe was the bounty hunter that had been tracking them down since Ord Mantell. Now that the stormtroopers were chasing down Han, Leia, and Chewie, they were blasting down their opponents and docking through corridors, using Lando as a guide, who was now trying to figure out what he was going to do to get himself out of the situation. Vader wasn't at all aware of this. He came to Bespin to secure Luke Skywalker for the Emperor. Obviously, in a testament to the rule of two, Vader was going to turn Luke against his own morals and bring him into the fight with Palpatine. But now, that didn't seem even right. Vader looked at 3PO and asked the droid what his son was like, as he sat down. 3PO was a little confused. He looked at Vader and quickly did the math. Shmi Skywalker had Anakin Skywalker. Anakin and Padme, that was probably the name, right? They had Luke and Leia Skywalker, was that correct? Leia was an Organa, but Bail and Breya never organically had her. Leia rambled to him a couple times when she was a kid about how she knew she wasn't Bail and Breya's biological daughter. Bail had confirmed that, but maybe? 3PO came back to the moment and told Vader that if his son was Luke Skywalker, then he was brave, heroic, and cared for his friends. A natural-born pilot and leader who went out of his way to protect those he loved. That seemed like the correct response for someone like Luke. The droid was about to say something more, inquiring if Vader knew about his daughter, but the Dark Lord told 3PO that he was sorry before those words could ever come out. The droid didn't understand, as the towering dark creature stood up and walked over towards him. Vader placed his hand on the golden droid's shoulder, and told the droid that he made a mistake, one that cost millions if not billions of people their lives. 3PO responded with a confused gaze. Even though his face never changed, the emotions were always present. 3PO asked if Annie never became a Jedi. Vader looked away and told 3PO that he did, but he's the reason there are no more Jedi. The droid looked at Vader and expressed that there was still one Jedi. Which one was the question that followed. 3PO told him that Luke Skywalker was a Jedi. He said he was, at least, or trying to be. The droid suggested that if he was sorry about something, then maybe the best way to approach it was by reconciling with his son. Vader agreed, but he had another point. Vader knew that there would be a genuine benefit from actually going down the path of speaking with Luke, but there shouldn't be an introduction to such darkness. 3PO asked what he meant. Anakin looked down at the droid and told him that he was corrupted by darkness, a kind that turned him from Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader. That darkness could corrupt his son and hurt him too. There was a trap laid here for Luke. If he could move the trap away from the planet, then he could get Luke to safety. Maybe in their future, there was a chance for them to speak, but there needed to be time. He needed to do some right of his own wrongs. And it started with his first great mistake, the time that Anakin asked himself what had he done when he made a mistake. Before Anakin went forward, he asked 3PO if there was anything he remembered Padme saying about him. 3PO was always around her. She had always been a vocal thinker, so when she thought, it was usually speaking aloud, whether it was pacing around the floors of her home, preparing for debates, or simply making herself some food. She was always speaking. It helped her get her thoughts out of her mind. 3PO recalled, at least what he could find immediately, that she referred to him as a good man, someone who had a heart of gold but didn't always know what to do with it. While neither 3PO nor Anakin realized the context, she was speaking aloud to herself when she was making dinner. It was only a day or two after Anakin had gone back to the front lines, and a day or two before that was the day Ahsoka abandoned the Order. The context would have shattered Anakin's heart, but it could live with that answer. She obviously thought highly of him, and Shmi on the other hand was worried for his dreams, and his entire boyhood was sitting right in front of him again. In Vader's mind, he could reject this, but to Anakin, he couldn't. Luke was alive and out there. He could be corrupted for sure, but for what? He had hopes, dreams, and desires of his own. Would it be right for a father to do what Anakin's father figure did to him? Obi-Wan and Palpatine kind of both filled that role after Qui-Gon died. Obi-Wan more so before the Battle of Geonosis. But the point being, did Anakin want to make Luke's dreams and desires his own? Would that be fair to a kid he only met one other time, aside from their dogfight over the Death Star? Vader told 3PO to come with him. There was a rebirth taking place, and Vader wasn't going to allow his son to face the same suffering he was currently enduring. The two of them moved through the halls. 3PO kept pace with Vader. Each step he took, a memory of his own life resurfaced. Each step came with a face of someone else he loved, and a life that had long since left him. Anakin could not be Vader, and Vader could never be Anakin. The realization that followed the clinging of footsteps against the surface of the pristine floors only helped him understand his purpose once more. Qui-Gon said he was the chosen one. Padme said she loved him more than anything. Obi-Wan said he was strong and wise, and Shmi wanted him to follow his dreams and become a Jedi. Maybe being a Jedi wasn't something he could chase, or should chase. Maybe it wasn't the life he was meant to lead, but this was not the life of those who were closest to him wanted him to live. Vader found the commander of the unit of stormtroopers deployed on the surface. He informed them that the rebels from Hoth had been located. It was the Wookiee smuggler and princess as well as everyone else. Vader told the commander to pack everything up. They weren't supposed to be here. The boy the Emperor was searching for would be on the planet of Nathoin. The rebels had intercepted intel that the Empire was searching for Skywalker, which is why they came to Bespin. Skywalker had gone to Nathoin to find and meet other rebels. The stormtrooper understood, as Vader requested that he prepare his shuttle. They did as he asked, and he left for his castle. 3PO and his maker took the vessel to Mustafar, while the Executor confusedly departed without Lord Vader. He gave them orders to follow, and so that's what they did. The reason Vader was going back to Mustafar was so that he could find the answers he was searching for. If he stayed put with the rest of the Imperial forces on Nathoin, he might trickle back down the dark path again, and he didn't want to do that. There was still the possibility that he could do it on Mustafar, but with his trusted droid companion with him, maybe they, together, could destroy the Sith Lord. This also wasn't Vader becoming a complete Jedi. He had the intention to use the dark side. He just realized that maybe serving Sidious wasn't the best thing for him to do. When they arrived at the planet, 3PO admitted that he thought he had been here before, and Anakin nodded his head. He remembered seeing 3PO in the cockpit when Padme arrived. To Skywalker, that day was the most replayed day of his life. Every single second of that day led him to this position. If he had acted differently, swung his blade a different way, or just did anything else entirely, he may have not been in this predicament. But that wasn't what he could dwell on at the moment. His thoughts were on the future and how he could change it. Vader stormed into his castle, trying to think of something that Anakin might do. So much of his time as Vader had been about using his strength, not really his usage of his mind. Anakin wandered about as 3PO watched him. They were in the control tower of the castle. Mustafar changed greatly in 20 years. The lava rivers had mostly died out, and there was still one strong stream that still flowed through Vader's castle. Outside of it, life was sprouting, and 3PO noticed something that Vader hadn't. In all fairness, he didn't spend a whole lot of time at his castle anymore, but there was a reading on the console. There was a life form existing outside the castle, so Anakin went to investigate it. What he found was the Eye of Webbish Bog. Upon meeting the creature, it bestowed to him a device. The creature had been holding it, waiting for the next individual to bestow it upon. What Vader didn't realize was that this device was called a Sith Wayfinder. It could be used to find the hidden world of the Sith. Exegol was a sanctuary of darkness, one used by the Emperor. Vader knew of Exegol and wanted to discover it, once he was finished with his son. But now, in an effort to destroy his master, he would learn what evil secrets lay on that hidden world. In Vader's mind, there had to be something, maybe a key or a secret weakness to his master. Vader understood that to kill Sidious, he would need extra assistance. If he didn't get it, then Palpatine might just kill him altogether, and his son would be lost. His only care was making sure Luke was kept safe. While Anakin and 3PO were coming up with a plan, something that 3PO wasn't even sure if he could properly assist with, the rebels on Bespin were making their escape. Due to being betrayed by Lando, Han, Leia, and Chewie had some issues with him. He was able to slyly talk his way out of it and express that he didn't want to be involved in their war, but there was also an issue for him. If the Empire could just step on them like that without him having any say, he kinda had a decision to make, and that was to join their fight. Despite Luke still having visions of his friends in danger on Cloud City, he arrived before Han and the others left, so he was able to get back in touch with his friends and leave with them. Obviously, they were all worried and confused about 3PO, but no one knew where he went. The biggest concern was that he had been captured, but he didn't carry important data on the Alliance, not at least like R2. The Empire could technically crack the droid open, so they decided to chase the Imperial flagship to Nathoin and see if they could find the droid. With Boba gone, having had to retreat from battle with an injury to his ribs, they could get to the flagship with little interference from the bounty hunter. Anakin and 3PO decided on a mission. More so Anakin than 3PO because the golden droid didn't really know what was happening, but he was along for the ride. As they left Mustafar, they continued talking about things that 3PO could remember. It was a little jumpy for the droid. He'd remember something from 26 BBY at the homestead, and then he'd be in the Clone Wars, something from Leia's childhood would pop up, and then he'd be on Lothal with Chopper and Ezra. It just kept changing. All they could really do was tell Anakin what he knew about Luke, Shmi, and Padme. The thought of telling Vader about his daughter had since slipped his mind, because there were too many questions and changes coming his way for him to really keep up with himself. When they moved through the red honeycomb zone, they arrived over Exegol. Thanks to charting the course, it would be much easier to leave the system, because everything would have been tracked already. They landed the ship on the surface of the planet, outside of a massive structure. Vader's Lambda shuttle fit right in with the aesthetics of this dark and dreary world. 3PO made a couple bewildered noises as they moved into the temple, where the lightning didn't look like it could hit them. Vader had been to a couple Sith landmarks, so why wasn't he informed about this one? A galaxy away, Palpatine, who was in hyperspace, could feel something change, but he wasn't sure what it was. He was returning to Coruscant at the moment. He had just visited the location of the second Death Star, something Vader was actually aware of this time. The project was coming along very nicely as it seemed, but something had changed. He just didn't know what it was. Vader and 3PO marched into a lab of some sorts. Had Vader cut Luke's hand off and went the normal trajectory, he would have found his son's hand sitting inside of one of the tubes. Palpatine was building something here. As they walked into the lab, some creatures were released from their chambers, and they ignited their staves and ran towards Vader. 3PO made a loud howl in fear as a red lightsaber ignited, and the former Dark Lord slashed through each of the creatures, cutting them down one at a time with ease. His eyes moved around the facility as he could see the Sith loyalists coming for him. They drew their knives and Vader told them that he was the Dark Lord of the Sith. He was here on the Emperor's command. They didn't seem to care for that, so by lifting his hand, he used the Force to launch their Sith daggers and knives into their bodies, killing each of them, without even allowing them to get within 10 feet of him. Anakin turned to 3PO and told him to follow along. They moved along, and when they got to another chamber, Vader saw something horrifying. A fleet that went on for what seemed to be forever. An entire fleet of ships that could destroy planets. It appeared that none of these ships were finished yet. They were just undergoing repairs and construction. Vader realized something though. If these vessels were designed for what he believed they were, he could utilize them. Due to them being based around Imperial tech, They could go to planets without being detected by an enemy force. Quickly, they searched through the information in the database, and Vader got some chain codes from his shuttle. They found a crew of Sith loyalists, of which he told them that he was the Emperor or the Sith Lord. Instead of acting like Sidious told him to do something, he was able to confirm that he was the Sith Lord that killed Palpatine. With a small crew, they went to the most finished Zyston-class Star Destroyer and powered it up. This was the first model Zyston, so it was copied and pasted across the entire fleet. Using this one would probably be their best bet. They still hadn't figured out how to utilize the power of the vessel, so this entire thing would be a learning process. As they were leaving the planet, the Lambda shuttle that Vader brought was stolen and vanished. He didn't know where it went or who was inside of it, but he didn't really care. As they slowly guided the Zyston out of the atmosphere, he told the crew to prepare the cannon. They were a little taken aback by this, but they followed his directive, being that he was the Sith Lord. Vader told them to fire on the planet. One resisted and their necks snapped. C-3PO let out a shocked, "Oh great heavens!" as Vader turned over and told his golden friend that this wouldn't last for much longer. The ship prepared its ignition and a blast was fired into the surface of the planet. Exegol started to buzz as it exploded from the inside out, in a fiery blaze of reds and oranges. Vader told them to chart a course for Coruscant. Palpatine on the other side of the galaxy fell over. He was walking into his throne room and he felt a sudden jolt from his stomach. Lord Vader had betrayed him. Outside of his knowledge, Vader had destroyed his one chance at true immortality. The secrets of Darth Plagueis the Wise had eluded him. Palpatine went to his Sith altar to confirm his concerns. Outside of Nathoin, the Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, Lando, and R2 group ran from the Executor after finding that 3PO had never been captured by the Empire. Their little mission was a bit strenuous, but Luke was glad he trusted his intuition. Yoda seemed to be a little too flawed to teach. There was something a bit odd about that little goblin. He would return though, but for right now, the most important thing in Luke's mind was helping his friends, which is what he was doing as they made their great escape. Exiting hyperspace over Coruscant was a Zyston-class Star Destroyer. It entered and the entire Imperial fleet reacted, before realizing it was just another Star Destroyer. Vader told the crew to prepare a single reactor ignition. They turned back as he told them where to aim and what he wanted to see. The Imperial fleet, on the other hand, saw the weapon powering up, and they prepared to open fire. But as they did, the Zyston shot a singular red laser down past their fleet and right into the formerly called Senate District, and ripped up plates of city blocks, tearing down the old Senate building, Executive building, shredding through the Jedi Temple, and destroying the entire financial district. It created a crater that went down thousands of feet, not actually touching the surface of the planet, but doing just enough damage. The strike caught the Imperial fleet off guard as chunks of planet were sent into the atmosphere. Vader ordered the deckhands to chart a course for Endor. He could feel it. His master was dead. The Sith would be destroyed, and being that he was the last of them, the Sith would die at Endor. Though, as their ship turned hard to port side, they were riddled with heavy cannons from the Imperial Defense Fleet. Edges of the Zyston were detonated, as they barely made it all the way back around and powered up the hyperdrive and disappeared into hyperspace. The crew of the ship got to the repairs, some of them even getting sucked out into space, as Vader prepared the next leg of his plan. He left the bridge, sensing the dissension between his crewmates. 3PO followed him, as they went down towards the escape pod area. Anakin told 3PO that he wasn't around for these type of maneuvers during the Clone Wars, but what they were going to do is what he would have called a war crime. 3PO let out an "oh dear" before Vader explained everything to him. Darth wanted his droid to survive, and if it wasn't for 3PO, he wouldn't feel so decent right now. There was a lot that needed to be done, but for the time being, he wanted to finish what he needed to do. After hours had passed by, and news got out about the billion or so casualties from the rancid Imperial attack on Coruscant, the galaxy began to react. By this time, the Zyston dropped out of hyperspace, and 3PO dropped out of the escape pod. Vader, on the other hand, inside the engine room, turned the thruster up all the way on the console and then cut it to pieces. As he did, he marched from the engine room to the hangar bay and cut down every single Sith loyalist and Final Order member who came across him. They were trying out new armor types, and none of them stood a chance, as the former Dark Lord came through. Once Vader got to the hangar bay, he took a shuttle and departed. Inside the bridge, the crew panicked as the Zyston slammed into the base of the Death Star. The superstructure started to collapse, and because there was a red kyber crystal inside the heart of the Star Destroyer, an explosion started to grow. Vader used his shuttle to suck up 3PO's escape pod as they fled the system. The Imperial war machine would have to rely on what they had now, and now the Alliance had the ability to continue the war from here. Maybe it wasn't the Jedi way, or the Sith way, but Vader, after spending 30 years watching corruption fester inside the Senate District of Coruscant, decided that the root of all evil came from the corruption that Palpatine spread on the capital of the galaxy. Not all of the trillions of people needed to die, which is why he didn't kill them, but a couple billion in the most grossly financial district on the planet were expendable in Anakin's mind. He gave 3PO the shuttle and returned to an Imperial medical facility, upgrading his armor, changing some things around, and then vanishing. 3PO was given coordinates to give to Luke, if Luke ever had time to come and visit, while Anakin would retreat into isolation. He knew that he would face punishment, one that he did deserve if he was found, but in his mind, he still had time to pass knowledge off to his son. If that worked, then perhaps Anakin could watch Luke as he continued to grow up, maybe even become a part of his life. But those were only hopes. Anakin retreated to Eileen, the same planet 3PO went to during the Clone Wars, which is why Vader was inspired. Due to the golden droid never being able to contain himself, he told Anakin about some things to remember from the Clone Wars. One of those things was this planet. Anakin arrived, now sporting new robes and wearing a chest apparatus that was designed by an Imperial scientist to help him breathe without a mask. Anakin did bring his Vader mask with him, and the lightsaber that he crafted as well as Obi-Wan's. He would learn to heal his own crystal, but in the meantime, he was able to settle down and enjoy some semblance of peace for just a little while. For about a month, Anakin's time would be pretty peaceful. He had his moment of balance. Not that he was balanced, but in a way, he made up for what he had done. He was responsible for billions of deaths. Those at Alderaan, while he didn't give the order, he didn't stop it, died for nothing. And those on Coruscant, while not all evil, weren't doing anything to upset the status quo of Palpatine. Luke came to Eileen to find Darth Vader, who according to C-3PO was his father? That didn't make sense, but he came anyways. He was a little worried about what he might find when he did get to the planet, but when he landed, instead of seeing the hulking dark creature from his vision in the cave of Dagobah, he saw a man, one with normal-sized arms and legs, one that was starting to grow his hair back. It wasn't too long, but it looked like a buzzed rendition of his hair from before the Battle of Geonosis. When Luke walked up, he held his lightsaber, but Anakin spoke roughly, telling him to please sit. He was working through his damaged voice, especially without the mask, but he was able to speak clearly to his son. Luke didn't sit, he was on edge, and asked if it was true. Did he really build 3PO, and was he really his father? Anakin nodded his head. But he told his son that his failures were not his burden to bear. He told Luke the story of how it happened, and then continued to explain how everything came to follow. Luke was aware because 3PO told him everything, but there remained the question, why? Anakin could say 100 things. None of them would be the answer. None of them would be satisfying to hear, because nothing would ever, for Luke, make sense to him. Of course, not unless he was faced with the same issue himself, the fear of losing everything he loved and cared about. Luke eventually lowered his guard and sat down on a log across from his father, who poured him some herbal tea, and they spoke. There were too many emotions to fathom for the two of them, but there was something that Anakin did encourage. He told Luke to return to Yoda and finish his training. Anakin referenced the lessons Yoda taught him, and how in the moment they didn't make sense. In the moment, when Yoda told him to let go, this was not a rejection of Anakin's fears, this was an accepting of loss. Anakin had since learned that in that moment, before his turn, he rejected something because he didn't want to come to terms with death. While it was unnatural, Yoda was still right. At 800 years old, the Grand Master had lost thousands of friends, students, and masters. He understood more than Anakin in that moment ever realized, so he asked that his son learn what Yoda had to say, and Luke appreciated that. Despite their conversation being between the two of them, there would be an unexpected guest. Despite 3PO forgetting to tell Vader, he did not forget to tell Leia that her real father was partially responsible for the destruction of Alderaan. Again, didn't stop it from happening. So one day, when he heard a ship land, he expected to see Luke, but he actually had gone to Dagobah to finish his Jedi training. What Anakin saw was a Wookiee, the smuggler, and the princess. Why were they here? 3PO brushed past them and waddled over as he leaned over at Anakin and told him that he realized he didn't get the chance to tell him this, but the princess was his daughter. Anakin's blood ran cold. His face turned pale, well, even more pale than it already was, and he looked at a very unhappy Leia. Han told her that he'd be here if she needed anything, and she looked at him with daggers. Not that they were meant for him, but she knew. She was going to go speak with her good old dad. When she sat down, he tried to think of anything to say, but he couldn't find the words. So much like her mother. It was honestly intoxicating. He didn't know she existed, and then just like that, Luke's sister showed up. Luke knew before he got here, too. but Leia wanted to give Vader a little surprise. She had a lot to dig through as Anakin looked at Han in the background, who had his hands on his hips and whispered to the Wookiee. Leia asked him how he felt, knowing that he killed so many people. Great conversation starter. He kind of avoided the question though. Instead, he told her that there was something he wanted her to have. He walked back into his hut and gently picked it up and brought it over. Anakin sat down. He remembered a couple events from the past. The senator from Alderaan's daughter being taken from Alderaan about 12 years ago was always an odd decision in his mind. It didn't make sense. He spent years trying to piece it together. Why Alderaan? Why Kenobi? It never clicked for him. In the few seconds she had said what she said, he realized that Obi-Wan had been the bestest friend he could have ever asked for. He took care of twins. Being that Luke had Anakin's old saber, it was only fair that Leia was to have Obi-Wan's. He sat down and uncovered it. The cloth around it had a Jedi symbol, and he reached over to her, telling her that he missed out on so much of her life. He never had a connection with her, and the only connection she had, he destroyed. Anakin understood that their bond would be hard to start, if ever getting started. But as he sat down, he told her that he wanted her to know that he would forever be sorry for taking her found family away from her. Leia looked at the lightsaber and took it into her hands, remembering the first time she saw it, when she was just a girl. A tear filled her eye, and he told her that he was sure Obi-Wan would want her to have it. She held the Jedi weapon for a moment and twisted it in her hands. The kyber crystal was just like Obi-Wan, warm, kind, and compassionate. It felt like home, and that was something she never, ever thought she'd feel again. There weren't many words said after that, but with Leia, they never needed to be said. Anakin was an open book, and Leia was always good at understanding. Leia and her friends would eventually leave, and Anakin would feel a sense of peace. He would watch the Falcon lift off and fly away, as he let a tear slide from his eye. Maybe someday they could be father and daughter. If not, then that was something he'd have to live with. He made the choices he made, and that had to be okay. It was up to his daughter if she wanted to have a relationship with him or not. In the years that followed, the rebellion would win. After the Emperor died, the Empire caved in on itself. Luke spent the last year of Yoda's life with him on Dagobah, learning how to truly become a Jedi Knight. Luke formed a really strong connection with Yoda, one that he eventually brought back to Anakin. But Luke, like his father, always was looking to the horizon. He and his friends would be responsible for the destruction of the Empire. Luke, Lando, Leia, Han, Chewie, and the lot of them. Anakin would have sporadic visits from people. Sometimes they wouldn't even be people, but Force ghosts. All of it was fine with him though. He cleansed his kyber crystal and he found his peace. Luke and Leia would come together sometimes or separately other times. Luke definitely more than his sister. It was hard for Leia, and she didn't totally forgive him for who he became. But it was with the influence of their father that both the twins were able to excel in their own lives. Luke took some of Anakin's advice for the new Jedi Order. Due to his year with Yoda on Dagobah, Luke had a much greater understanding of what he needed to learn. The Grand Master also gave him hundreds of locations to visit, which Luke would do as he began a new order, one with the combined influence of Yoda and Anakin. Leia, on the other hand, had the most success thanks to Anakin. It wasn't because of what he said, but rather what she accepted. She would be discovered to be the daughter of Anakin Skywalker and Padme Amidala when she became a senator. This was incredibly important, because when people found out that Vader was Anakin, or in other words Vader was her father, they wanted her removed from office. But so many people by that point had accepted that Anakin died inside the temple, that it didn't matter. The New Republic was bumbling over themselves, due to their complacency during the Imperial era. Thanks to a new home on Hosnian Prime, the New Republic had a genuine chance at revival, especially because of the Zyston incident. But the little issue with people calling Leia Vader's daughter would make up a very, very small mark on her record. Since she had openly called herself the daughter of Anakin and Padme, people didn't ever connect her with Vader. There were some radicals that tried to do away with her, but their incessant behavior was regarded as nothing short of immature. Their points were thrown out with their rhetoric against Leia. The rest of what she was able to do was become the second Chancellor of the New Republic, following in the footsteps of Mon Mothma. Leia would take office at the perfect time. Despite the final order dying on Exegol, the Imperial Remnant, led by the Shadow Council, returned with Thrawn, and a still militarized New Republic came back with a strong defense to wipe the Empire away for good. Anakin wouldn't find another partner, and he wouldn't chase connection. He didn't pity himself, and he learned to love himself. His children would be the greatest joys of his life, and he would know that he truly made it, that he truly survived the day that Han and Leia showed up. calling him grandfather because they had an infant named Ben Solo. And that, my friends, is our story. Again, special thanks to all of our patrons: Benjamin Wells, Ozpin, Angel Dust, Wolf Lover 1997, Groot 36, Rosebird, Hunter Belden, Alexandria Reads the Beginning and End, Jango Fett Clone, Nick 5098, Ben Ingram, The Big Red Pure Mark, Diamond Constant, Darth Nemesis, Lord Tibbs, CC2024, Galvin Gaming, Tristan Mandalore, Sir William 7067, Darth Revan, Granddaddy Bane, Laliant, Sky Guy, Penguin, Cullen Rooney, Shark Midori, Nick, Michael Erlanger, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Weewu670, Annika Stank Runner, CT7567, Toaster Oven, Oz of Oz, Darth Knox, The Eternal Padawan, Joshua Tem, Johnny DeGuin, Sansa Skeleton, Jedi Sloth, Mr. Yeet Gamer, Lord Calig, Yelling Slayer 66, Mammotus Dudus, Anakin 003, Lord Draken, 460 Star Wars, Airbus, Rex the Wolf, May 3 First Names, Darksing 46, Baron Joshua, and Lord Deadwing for supporting the channel. Smash that like button. Let's talk about this story. In the same way that R2 saved Anakin on Mustafar, I wanted this to be a droid and Vader story. So a story with 3PO and Vader, obviously. Because I feel like that's a dynamic that's kind of just forgotten about after Phantom Menace. Like, he builds a droid, he speaks to him like once or twice, and that's kind of their whole dynamic. And so I kind of wanted to bring that back and add more context to it, because I feel like a lot of 3PO's relationship with Anakin would be through other people, and I think through those other people, specifically Shmi and Padme, you'd be able to find Anakin within Vader. I think this really only works after Vader learns about Luke. I don't think he would do this per se in the Kenobi era. I also kind of like the idea of 3PO experiencing the war crime side of Vader / Anakin for the first time during this era, because he never really got to experience that during the Clone Wars. And then for the Leia and Anakin part, like, Luke and Anakin definitely are going to get along a lot better. I wanted to kind of focus on how Anakin's relationship with Leia is going to be much different because of how everything goes in this story. So I hope you all enjoyed. I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.